There's two ways to change your looks. First, general looksmaxxing. This is things like lowering your body fat percentage, improving your personal hygiene, skincare, and even wearing shoe lifts. Then second, Nichemaxxing. This is things like uptaking a particular fashion, getting a unique haircut, tattoos, and jewellery. Now, a lot of people confuse these two things and aren't sure which they should do, what their purpose is, and how each may affect their chances in dating. Well, in this video I'm going to be giving a full breakdown for both, so hopefully by the end these confusions will be no more. We'll start with Looksmaxxing because this is the more widely known concept. Looksmaxxing would be defined as anything you can do to change your looks that directly increases your SMV. In other words, improves your attractiveness. As stated, this can take many different forms. The ones I outlined right at the beginning are just a few examples. And I actually have a full video on Looksmaxxing already which has a complete list of things you can do. Here is a reminder for those of you that missed that video. Now, because all of these things directly increase your SMV, in my opinion they should be a top priority for every man to make themselves more attractive. If you do these things, you will increase your chances in dating, provided of course you don't take any of them to the extreme. As for some other pros, Looksmaxxing will improve your life outside of dating too. Mental health benefits from looking confident leading you to being more confident. Studies show better looking people are more likely to receive pay rises, are more respected among peers, and see an increase in the chance of being told yes when asking for favours. All of these are positive additions to your life and therefore means Looksmaxxing is important for all men to do. So, that's Looksmaxxing. Now, how about Nichemaxxing? The definition for this would be changing your looks in ways that don't necessarily increase your SMV, but instead makes you appealing to a small subset of women. In other words, the difference between Looksmaxxing and Nichemaxxing is Looksmaxxing will make you more attractive to all women, regardless of what their individual tastes and preferences are, while Nichemaxxing will make you more attractive to specific handfuls of women depending on what their type is. The two most common niches for guys are the pretty boy and the hypermasculine, rugged testosterone junkie. Then there are also other subcategories too, which we won't go into too much depth for this video. So, why should you nichemax? Or actually, the better question to ask is, what will be bad if you don't nichemax? Well, allow me to use this 45-second analogy about an employee hiring situation to explain. There are two companies, both of which looking to hire someone. One, a finance investment company, the other an article writing company. There are also three candidates. Candidate 1 has an A in maths and a C in English, Candidate 2 has B's in both, and Candidate 3 has a C in maths but an A in English. Now, who gets hired? Well, Candidate 1 gets hired by the investment company because of his maths abilities. Then Candidate 3 gets hired by the article writing company for his English abilities. And as for Candidate 2 in the middle, well, he gets left out because he brings no specialised value to the table. That's the analogy, and from this, what I want to hone in on is this word, specialised. Nichemaxxing can essentially be equated to being specialised. What does this mean in dating terms? Well, if you don't nichemax, you can end up being mediocre to all women, but attractive to none. And this is because you'd be a guy who brings nothing unique to the table. Now, having nothing unique to bring to the table isn't necessarily bad if you're a man at the top. But if you're not here, which is the bottom 90% of guys, you will be outcompeted by these men who are at the top every single time. What I mean by this is if there are two guys that both have the same style, both have the same haircut, and both have the same basic conversation, but one guy is better in every other way, then women will always choose this guy in favour of the other guy. So, what can this less attractive man do to increase his chances? The answer is Nichemaxxing. By changing his appearance, niching down to a certain style, he will no longer be in direct competition with these chads. This is because he is competing in his own separate market. Now, of course, this means he is going to have less options. However, this is balanced by having less competition. In simple terms, it's nothing more than a trade-off. Before, he was mediocre to 100% of women, but after, he is highly attractive to 10% and not the type to the other 90%. You tell me in the comments which you think is better. To best showcase this trade-off, the easiest way I find to explain the difference between Looksmaxxing and Nichemaxxing is using this graph. On the x-axis, we have the 1 to 10 scale that we've all heard of, showing how attractive women think you are. Then on the y-axis, we have the percentage of women that gives you each rating. So, for example, for this man who is unlooksmaxed and unnichemaxed, he may have scores like this. 90% of women rate him a 5, 5% a 4, and 5% a 6. Now, let's see what his results will be after he has a Looksmaxxing journey. He cuts 5 kg of fat, making his face leaner, puts on 5 kg of muscle, whitens his teeth, starts skincare, grooms his facial hair so it's now even, and lastly gets his nose straightened. Quite the improvement compared to when he started. And since Looksmaxxing directly improves attractiveness across the board amongst all women, his scores after should now look like this. So 90% rate him a 6, 5% a 5, and 5% a 7. Anyway, so far, what this man has done might sound great, but in reality, I don't think he's really changed his perception in the eyes of most women. He's still considered a 6 or below in 95% of cases, which would categorise him as a backup dating option at best, or a new member of the friend zone at worst. In other words, Looksmaxxing hasn't helped him because now he's just slightly above mediocre to most women. He's still below the line of visibility in most cases. But now, this is where Nichemaxxing comes in. After mixing up his style, changing the facial expression of his photo to a more deep, dark, mysterious look, getting a less common haircut, and a few items of jewellery, he now appeals to a smaller demographic of women. Therefore, his new ratings will likely look like this. What we've essentially done is flattened the curve, with 10% rating him a 4, 20% a 5, 40% a 6, 20% a 7, and 10% an 8. What's interesting is, if you notice, his overall average hasn't changed. He still has the same face, same body fat percentage, same frame, etc. But now he's become more attractive to some girls and less attractive to others. The girls that rate him an 8 most likely have a strong preference for this serious kind of look, while those that rate him a 4 probably prefer a softer type with an e-boy haircut. Anyway, to show the advantage of Nichemaxxing, he's now visible to 6 times as many women compared with before. And yes, on the opposite end, you'll notice there are a lot more women who now see him as unattractive, with some even viewing him as a sub 5. But who cares, because he's not going to be concerned with these anyway. They pretty much viewed him as invisible before, and they only view him more so this way after. This shows the underlying benefit of Nichemaxxing is that you increase your chances with the girls that already had a thing for you, at the expense of decreasing your chances with the girls that would have never dated you in the first place. That's the trade-off of Nichemaxxing, and I hope you can see why it can be a benefit to some guys. Anyway, now you understand both niche and Looksmaxxing, let's move on to the big final question. Which one should you focus on? Interestingly, the answer is actually quite nuanced. In my opinion, if you are a normie, you should do both, but if you're a Chad or sub 5, you should only focus on Looksmaxxing. Let's break down this nuance one by one. Explaining Chads and sub 5s is easy. For Chads, they are already visible to a high percentage of women. So, by Nichemaxxing, they'll likely only hurt their abundance as more and more women get disinterested of their changes. This means, instead, they should solely focus on Looksmaxxing to maintain their status at the top. As for sub 5s, they too should focus on Looksmaxxing because in their current stage, they are already invisible to all women. And no amount of Nichemaxxing is gonna change that. There is no such thing as an e-boy who's overweight. Therefore, they need to vigorously focus on Looksmaxxing first, try to reach a 5 or something, then from there try to niche down once they're at this level. Now, obviously, this solution doesn't work for true sub 5s who have unchangeable / genetic flaws holding them back. But I have other content highlighting the solutions for you in other videos. Finally, for normies, or already average guys, these have the most nuanced advice, because they want to increase the number of women that see them as visible. Therefore, Looksmaxxing will help because it should increase their base SMV from a 5 to a 6 or 6 to 7, and then from there, Nichemaxxing will distribute their scores among women, so a small subset, say 5 to 15%, sees them as a 7+. Then all they have to do is focus on those. After this, things get even more nuanced because there is one major exception to this, and that is the guys with genetic niches. I'd estimate about 30 to 40% of my audience falls into this category, and one example is darker skin guys. Now, this is just my opinion, but I would say all normies should try to niche down so they appeal to 10% of the dating pool. So for someone like Hamza, imagine if he got an e-boy haircut, started wearing e-boy clothes and got a few piercings. This wouldn't work because no one, literally no one, is demanding this type from this niche. Therefore, someone like Hamza doesn't need to worry about niching down because he already has one from his genetics. And he knows this. This is why his style seems so plain and basic. I myself too fall into this category as I have red hair. And all the time in the comments I see people saying things like, "You're missing style," or "Grow your hair out, bro." And my reason for why I haven't done these things is because this would just put me in a smaller and smaller niche. As you guys might be able to predict, only a small subset, say 5% of women, actually have a preference for my specific niche. Therefore, I try to dress as plain and boring as possible and have the most basic haircut available, so I appeal to the widest number of women that already have me as their type. And, to prove what I'm saying is true, and I swear I'm not making this up, a few videos ago when I talked about this girl Layla who I went on a date with, by pure chance, a couple months ago I saw her at a party at the same uni as me, and guess who she was with? Another guy with red hair. The odds of this were insane because I didn't even know she went to my uni. This shows the legitimacy of Nichemaxxing. Anyway, before I close the vid off, I want to address any loyal or semi-loyal fans. Just a couple weeks ago, I have officially been cancelled on Fiverr where I had been selling my face rating and Looksmaxxing services which they now deem as inappropriate. And on top of this, I also received an age restriction from YouTube on my second to last video. 2 huge blows in 1 month. But thankfully, I've been able to somewhat bounce back from this by launching my fresh new website for both mobile and desktop, which from now will be my new place to sell services without being under the strings of the mainstream. Everything is fully functional, all 3 services are available the same as usual, just this time without the Fiverr service fee. So, if you want to know where you stand, the reasons why, and receive a guide for your Looksmaxxing journey, and help keep this channel independent, click the link below now, it'll be the first in the description.